Hi everyone, welcome to my presentation on ADHD. I'm Fahmida and this is my capstone presentation for GenEd 1038, Sleep. To kick things off, let's talk about the scope or prevalence of ADHD. Oftentimes, there's a misconception that ADHD is an American disorder or the susceptibility is higher in the US. However, this can be due to two broad reasons. A, because in developing countries, um, because of resource constraints, the focus is on infectious diseases or non-communicable diseases, which have a greater burden rather than neurodivergence. Or another reason could be the difference in standards or thresholds when it comes to diagnosing ADHD. And this is also applicable to Western countries and not just to developing countries. Another important aspect to consider is how ADHD differs in men and women. So oftentimes men are more likely to display symptoms of hyperactivity or impulsivity, and because those are more prominent or more visible, men are more likely to get ADHD diagnoses than women. And oftentimes, even if women have impulsivity or hyperactivity symptoms, they are seen to hide those symptoms because of the stigma that exists, and because these kind of symptoms are seen as far less acceptable when they're coming from women. ADHD is seen in all age groups, and 90% of children who get diagnosed carry it into their adulthood. Even though ADHD, the term, has been coined in 1987, there are similar conditions that we can see in 18th and 19th century literature coming from physicians, for instance, that talk about similar conditions of people struggling with attention or, hyperactivity. And there is this debate that whether recent increases in ADHD diagnosis are due to actually ADHD cases increasing, or is it because people just becoming more aware, and whether it's because of this placebo effect. Um, when it comes to health and safety consequences, there have been different studies conducted on the relationship between ADHD and sleep qualities. For example, partial limb movement syndrome and apnea. We learned about apnea from our lecture in week 10. Scientists have also looked into changes in REM sleep in people who are diagnosed in ADHD. We learned about the structure and role of REM sleep in week 2. And so far, the results of these studies overall have been ambiguous in the sense that some studies have found significant correlations and others have not. In addition to individual impacts of ADHD on people, for example, people struggling with work-life balance or managing their professional or academic workload or balancing their relationships, there are also large-scale societal impacts. So, for example, children with ADHD struggling in education and the increased costs associated with that. There are also issues of overdiagnosis where people, because they're being exposed more to ADHD content on social media. So, for example, if you go on Instagram and TikTok, you'll see tests that say that, okay, if you recognize this pattern, you have ADHD, or come find out which subtype of ADHD you have, or there are content creators who are selling their products and services on social media and social media platforms profiting from those sales and advertisements. So oftentimes it's seen that people are coming to their physicians already having their mindset that they have ADHD, or of them coming with very strong ideas about what drugs and dosages they want. And there's also this issues of these ADHD stimulant misuse in especially college students. The past interventions that have been done for ADHD are, these authentic websites. For example, the CHAWD website, which talks about, ADHD management, and people can take self-paced courses. However, the problem is that because social media is putting up so much viral content and say sensationalized content, people are more likely to refer to those instead of coming to more authentic websites and reading about long scientific information, which is oftentimes very boring to them. The other issue is about accessibility. So especially in more resource constrained communities, there's less awareness. Because there's less awareness about ADHD, it's less likely that funding goes um, into this condition, and that people seek help when they have ADHD symptoms. The solutions that I propose are for social media platforms that expose users to content about ADHD. I my proposed solution is for lawmakers to pass legislation that mandates these social media platforms to ensure that either these content creators, when they're publishing content, or when brands are advertising their ADHD management strategies or products, they should require scientific resources um, used to back these advertisements or this kind of content. Um, Alternatively, what we can do is we ask these social media companies, or we require them to add links to authentic websites when it comes to um, conversations or posts about ADHD. So, for example, it's very similar to what we saw during COVID. I think this can help people to draw people towards more authentic sources, and this can in turn increase the legitimacy of these sources. So, for instance, in a developing country, if a teenager comes across these resources and finds out that they have an ADHD diagnosis, they'll be more able to convince their parents or elders that they have this condition, if there is scientific resources backing up these kind of posts on social media, because oftentimes people in a lot of developing countries do not consider mental health disorders or neurodivergent conditions as significant or as something worth considering. So if my proposed solution comes into place, the issue concerning awareness can be addressed, but also the issue concerning the legitimacy of this information can be addressed. Um, and even though this will take some time, probably a couple of years, and there can be some barriers when it comes to political capital and backlash from social media companies, the way to address is um, more awareness in the first place. And